three of these people, and I have watched parts of their journey. I'm sure this journey is more complex than what I've had the privilege to see. But to really unpack some of the things that have made life work for you. And Mikin, I'm going to start with you. Tell us, I mean, I think everyone needs to understand what really happened to make act grants work, not simply because it was so much money that was mobilized. I think funds is a result, and of course some incredible amount of funds were raised, but how people acted. It's very important to see how the network power of network unraveled, and why it was you and why not 10 others who were doing it. So eager to hear from you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nagma. You're too kind. Um, yeah, I think what led to happening was, I think, as Anand said, there were baddies that were visible. COVID was here. Lockdown was announced. It's like, hey, I think the call to arms was obvious, that it didn't need anyone to leave their ego behind or to think about like the urge, the basic human urge to like as in step up and do something is what led to act happening. The story of it goes that there were five of us from the startup ecosystem who created a WhatsApp group saying, okay, we need to do something. We don't know what. We don't even understand what's hitting us, but we need to do something. We are very, very uncomfortable in our places with the privileges we have, with the influence we have, and feeling helpless. So, what can we do? Maybe others will have better ideas. So, can we start talking? That five people WhatsApp group eventually became a 2,500 people startup versus COVID Telegram group on one end. While this was happening, a bunch of VCs had created another WhatsApp group. So venture capitalists like Mohit of Sequoia, now Peak 15, Shekhar of Axel, Prashant, Prakash, again of Axel, etc., had created another WhatsApp group, and they were asking the same question, and they were like, "Oh, this group seems to have had a head start. Let's ask them." So I was put on the spot and asked. We've come together. The best thing we can do is raise money and bring philanthropic money to the table. So, Mekin, tell us how much money will we need? I'm like, how am I supposed to answer that question? I have no idea. I don't even understand COVID at that point, and I said that I don't know the answer, but if you're going to trust my guess, I'm like, let's start with 100 crores, and they were back in a week saying, "Ha, ho gaya 100 crores. Now let's start doing." Right. So I think when you think about just what happened there, it was the intentions of these individuals, the trust that they enjoyed from having done decades of past work with a lot of people, right? And the money that they raised were coming from people for whom they had created enormous returns. So it was for profit money, and yeah, I liked in the previous panel how we talked about how we don't have to dissociate capitalism uh, from doing development work, but it was that money that flowed in at a moment's notice to set the ground for ACT grants to go. And I think then as wave 2 hit, we needed oxygen concentrators. There were companies who then lent us money from their books, right? These are unicorns who like, we trust you guys. We know you will be able to raise the money eventually, but the Chinese manufacturers need it as of today. So here is a few tens of millions of dollars. Please go, as in, get us the oxygen concentrators, and then we'll figure out how do we raise the money, what do we do, etc. So in my head, I think it happened because of the basic human desire of just wanting to do something when you are uncomfortable, when you know there is an enemy out the door. And then second is the trust that a lot of these people enjoyed based on their past work, based on what they had done. And I think the part about coming together was basically that intention and humility. It doesn't matter. None of us know. None of us know what's going on. So we actually had an IC every day. Right? So an investment committee would meet from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. and the first half was to learn. Like, hey, what is new about COVID today that we didn't know yesterday? And then start making decisions. And we would make decisions every day. In those 90 days, we decided about some 100 entities that act decided to fund. Small grants, do what it takes. Sometimes back very large biggies like Arvind to create N95 masks, or like push them that instead of getting one machine, can you get five? Because we don't want to be relying for N95 masks on imports. So yeah, we did things like this, but at the core, it was just this discomfort that got to do something.
Thank you, thank you. That, but there's another thing that stands out apart from what you've said. Yes, there is humility, and then there is a trust that people enjoy, and it hurts individually to see what is happening to the world, and you want to act. But there's also this thing that you mentioned, that the acceptance that we don't understand this, you know and I think a lot of our problems in our daily work as well as long term is to actually realize that this is how much I understand, and beyond this I will have to look at someone else and absorb from them. I think that place is very uncomfortable. Like yesterday in one of the panels, I think it was yesterday, where someone did say that because they were IIT, Geet said actually that someone who was from IIT IIM decided that he will play snooker because why could he not? So that does come in because we're so, and especially with the group that you're talking about is so accomplished that it's difficult to realize that we may not really be good at uncoding some of this.
Actually, this will get me started on a pet peeve around the dev sector. I feel like the group that we are talking about is actually almost always in the mode of we don't know. Uh, I think it is the entrepreneurs who probably have a better idea. Even the entrepreneurs don't know. We are going to take a bunch of bets. 90% of them will fail, right? And we are comfortable with that, right? That's the startup VC mindset, right? That failure is okay. It is almost guaranteed. There will be the one-off flip cut, right? That will happen, and it will pay our bills. It will pay for the investors who've backed us, etc. But majority will fail because we cannot predict the future, right? And I think as I entered the dev sector about 8 years back, and I started encountering theories of change, which seemed to know the future, that hey, we know this will happen and then this will happen and then, so input output outcome impact सब लिखा है, लेकिन कुछ नहीं होता यार. मतलब I feel the humility to say that boss, we don't know the future, like it is going to be hard, and the best we can do is, with everything that we know, here is a bet that's worth taking, right? Let's hope it plays out. Let's strengthen it. So I love the idea of strengthening institutions, strengthening organizations, who then have a good shot at solving problems, right? But otherwise, I don't think we can, any of us know the future.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very, very incredible to hear from you. When I come to Shagun, who has almost the same, I mean, let's say that you're looking at a global network, right? And of extremely influential people with extreme amounts of wealth, who are used to having solutions. How does Co-Impact at a global level manage to get people together for one issue and manage that expectation? So that must be a difficult group to manage.
Great, thanks. Hello, yeah. So thanks a lot, Nagma, and it's really a pleasure to be here. So I think I would just build on firstly to the point that was just made. I think when it comes to the development sector overall, I do agree with you that there is a lot of focus on having everything very neatly packaged and saying, this is what's going to happen. But somewhere I do also feel that it's the way the funds flow that's responsible for setting those expectations. And the risk taking, we don't enable that risk taking, we don't enable that failing fast, which is so important, right? And so to your question, Nagma, I do say that Co-Impact, which is the organization that I'm representing, it was born with this idea that ultimately the job of philanthropy is not to fix all the problems, but to play the role of a lever. It's basically leveraging what's already existing, but the problems that we want to solve are so complex. They are there for many, many, many generations, and it's going to take a long time for these problems to go away. And yet the way the development sector is right now becoming, it's so much about responding to RFPs, responding to the vision of different people. And so the entrepreneur's own vision, those who are closest to the reality and know what's going on, why it's going on, somewhere that vision, no one's banking that. So Co-Impact's whole idea was that how can we think about long-term sustainable change without having this trust-based philanthropy, which believes in providing that long-term flexible funding, where they can make mistakes and they can say, yes, this went wrong, let's pilot something else. And then of course the idea being that we also have to track, in the corporates, in the profit for profit world, there are bottom lines which don't exist in the development sector, right? So this was what really made these philanthropists sit back and say, yes, there is a way to change the way philanthropy is right now having. And this idea of then pooling resources, because of course everyone would want their own fund, would want their own name, but is there merit in also pooling these resources, kind of the model that we have, right, with private equities? And so I do think that is where Co-Impact really managed to kind of come up with its initial pitch, and that sort of was resonating. And then the question also becomes, well, when you're building and designing these systems, you're trying to fix these broken systems, are you going to make them inclusive? Because time and time again, we know that there are some specific groups of people who are getting systematically left behind. And for Co-Impact, the idea is that if you build this system for the ones who are most marginalized, the system will work for everyone else. If the system works for them, it works for everyone. So let's flip this and start to design the systems, fix the systems from that lens. So what I would say to the whole power of network and the example that you gave of Act Grant, it's saying that at the moment of emergency, at the moment of distress, when there's so much uncertainty, you are able to tap into the people who have, and they come together. What Co-Impact is saying that that's totally fantastic, but can this be the mainstream way of operating? So at Co-Impact, we really believe in this concept of winning coalitions, because we believe that no problem can be solved by any one entity. And when we work with our program partners who are just fantastic, one of the things we push them to do is that, okay, you come from a health organization and you are trying to make this difference, but maybe if you look at maybe on the legal side what's happening, maybe collaborate with organizations that are working on the law side of things, which they have never thought of before. And those winning coalitions are actually working. So there's huge the potential of these networks. And sometimes I think the word network has got such a bad reputation, because we all think, oh, it's such a transactional thing. But maybe we can start thinking about it as relationship building, because that's what it is at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So
But it is how easy or difficult it is it to manage, because you're, like I said, one is you've got two sets of complexities, to put it very simply. One is you have issues across the world. Context changes, in India it changes every 100 kilometers, but in the world. And then you also have givers from around the world. So the lenses of giving, the lenses of how people perceive issues are also very different. How does one manage that without compromising what needs to be done?
yeah, so I think what I would say is that there has also been an evolution even in our own trajectory, in the trajectory of our own funders. And initially, because for this to succeed, you need a little bit of that trust and less control. Of course, ultimately we are dependent on someone's wealth, someone's money that's flowing into this. So in the initial years, our model was very much about multiple reporting, and because we also want to reduce the burden, so we don't believe in so many reporting targets, so many, we have our dashboards, etc., but it has to work for the program partner. So it took time that for that shift to happen. But I think what really helped was that our funders are also able to see ultimately the impact that we are having. So it's like initially it was, very much like, okay, no, I want to see everything, what's going on. And we were like always running around helter skelter. How do we then make that shift to say, sorry, this is not something we have signed up for. We don't want our program partners to going through a struggle because one day someone wakes up and says, I want to see this, and you get me this information from around the world. It has taken time. And I also do agree that not every funder will agree to our model. So we really look for aligned funders, and that works for all networks, right? If you don't have that value based alignment, then you will not be able to
I'm so
succeed.
glad you came to that, because it's just like we choose our NGO partners, it's also very important to choose who we receive from. And that's where I'm looking at Viren. And Viren, for more than a decade, again, I've seen the remarkable shift of what OGQ has been able to do while keeping the core in place. Your core was always the athlete, always sports. But once, after speaking to you, it was very evident that sports was obviously one is gold medals for the country, but you were also using sports for social change, which was a never an articulated goal. But social change was happening because of Mary Coms of the world who were winning and changing what the ecosystem looked like. So that simultaneously, and I cut to the chase, is I have been coming to the events where, very well meaning, influential people would come and cheer and feel part of the movement. But for you to be able to say sports is as important as everything else, it has built up. It has taken time for the network to start working for you, if I say it mildly. How was that journey for you, as someone who led it right from the time when Geet said that there was zero money coming in to today where you have an army rallying around you?
Right. Good morning, everyone. First of all, a big thank you to Vidya and you, Nagma, for inviting me over here. Yeah, Edelgive has been partners of OGQ almost from day one, so it's great to have interacted so closely with both of you all, and I learned so much from Vidya and you as well, Nagma. Yes, actually, when Geet and Prakash sir had the vision to develop OGQ, it was honestly just an idea on paper. And I remember when they approached me, I had just come out, I just retired from the Indian hockey team the previous year. I'd gone to ISB. I had a very lucrative corporate job that I was about to start with here in Gurgaon. And then I just happened to meet Geet and Prakash, and they told me about this idea called OGQ. And for me, I was quite blown away because number one, there were wonderful people involved: Geet Sethi, Prakash Padukone, Vishwanathan Anand, Neeraj Bajaj, etc. Secondly, when I had played the Olympics, I played in Athens 2004, and the Indian hockey team just missed an Olympic medal. We lost to Australia in a very very close league match, and Australia went on to win the Olympic gold medal. We lost in the last 20 seconds. We lost 4-3, and I was so frustrated. After a time, I thought there's so many things that in Indian sport we can do better, because sport is such a powerful tool to inspire people. And actually, the one of the reasons I joined OGQ, because of course one was obviously the wonderful people involved, but also the power of the platform I felt. And yes, it was just an idea on paper. I was the first employee. There were no funds. We did not know. It was a blank slate. And really proud to say that over the last 15 years now, we have looked after the training of more than 600 of India's best Olympic and para athletes. And in the last three Olympics, London 2012, Rio 2016, Tokyo 2020, India has won a total of 15 Olympic medals, and the training of 9 of the 15 Olympic medal winners was looked after by OGQ. And something we evolved was the Paralympics, para athletes with physical disabilities. And I think that was I would say, uh, one of our best decisions to get into para sport. We have, for the last almost 4-5 years, we have been looking after the training of para athletes. These athletes, with some of them have amputated upper limbs, some of them have amputated lower limbs, many on wheelchairs, and truly inspirational stories. Many of you all would have heard the story of Sheetal Devi, right? And the armless archer. And athletes like Sheetal Devi someone who was born armless, and to be able to shoot with her feet, and she pulls the drawstring with her mouth. The target is 50 meters away, so from here to the other end, it's further than the other end of the room itself. And Sheetal Devi cannot drink a glass of water herself. She cannot feed herself. She cannot go to the washroom herself. She cannot put her clothes herself. And the power of someone like that to be able to inspire. I'll tell you a couple of more stories. Everyone's heard of Mirabai Chanu, the weightlifter who won the Olympic silver medal. So Mira came from a background so poor, from a small village far away from Imphal in Manipur. Mira didn't have 2 square meals a day to eat growing up. She used to firewood she used to lift firewood to earn money at that point of time. Uh, Tough girl coming from the mountains, she became a weightlifter. Mira's journey at the Olympics at Rio 2016 actually started with failure. Now, Mira is a very tiny girl. She's only 11 inches. She lives in the women's 49 kg weight category. Now, in that weight category, to to challenge for an Olympic medal, you have to lift about 115 kilos, clean and jerk. 115 kilos, that bar is so heavy. I am about 80 kilos, decently, half decent fit. I cannot lift that bar 2 centimeters off the ground. And this is a 49 kg young girl having to lift it over a head. Uh, that's something like they say, do not try it at home. That is exactly, none of us should ever try it at home. Uh, at the Rio Olympics, like I said, she failed in all her lifts. And until 2016, OGQ was not working with weightlifting or with Mirabai Chanu. But our research team was tracking her very closely. And she was not expected to win a medal, but she was expected to come top 8 in the world. So we were very surprised when she failed in all her lifts. So in December 2016, me and my team, we made the journey to Patiala to try and figure out what went wrong, what happened. So we had dinner with Meera and her coach. That dinner meeting turned into a 4-hour meeting. And I'm not kidding you, Mirabai Chanu was sobbing on the table for 2 out of the 4 hours as she was narrating the story of failure. And she said that the mental pressure on her was so immense at Rio that when she came on the platform in front of 1 million people, she just forgot the process. And in weightlifting, the process is everything. You forget one element of the process, you cannot lift those kind of weights which people like you and me can't even dream of. From that dinner meeting, it was very clear that Meera was very talented, her coach was very talented, but the ecosystem around her was pathetic. We had to first get a very good psychologist to ensure Meera overcame the fear of failure that kept plaguing her. We had to ensure she had a very good nutritionist, because for the next 4 years, we had to keep her within 49 kgs. And as we grow older, as we all know, it's hard to maintain weight. We had to keep her within 49 kgs, yet have the explosive strength to lift 115. We had to get a very good physiotherapist for her, because I'm a hockey player. We deal with boxers, wrestlers, but I've never seen the kind of I have a lot of injuries in my career, but I've not seen the kind of injuries that weightlifters have to deal with. In the last 3 months in the lead up to the Tokyo Olympics, Meera had 4 major injuries. She had a back injury, she had a neck injury, she had a shoulder injury, and she had a thigh injury. And each time we thought, oh gosh, 5 years of effort, because the Olympics got postponed by 1 year, 5 years of effort gone down the drain. But they say that Olympic champions are made of something else. And that was Mirabai Chanu. That young lady kept fighting, 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 pushing the pain barrier. And finally, 24th July 2021, first day of competition of the Tokyo Olympics, Mirabai Chanu finally successfully lifted 115 kilos, and she won the Olympic silver medal. And I cried buckets of tears, because for us it was 5 years of effort. For Meera and a coach, it was 10 years of effort. And the best thing was, exactly 3 months after the Tokyo Olympics, they had the women's weightlifting national championship. the number of girls that participated quadrupled from the previous year. And just the power of a young, today if you go to Imphal, every academy is filled with young girls who dream of becoming the next Mirabai Chanu. So for me, I think just the power of sport to give hope and to inspire. uh, One of the most inspirational moments for me at the Tokyo Olympics, obviously, for most of us it was Neeraj Chopra, Neeraj's gold medal. But for me, it was a team that did not win a medal. It was actually the Indian women's hockey team. And they came fourth at the Tokyo Olympics. They just missed out on a medal. In the quarterfinals, they beat Australia. Australia was world number one, unbeaten in the tournament. And the Indian women's hockey team beat them 1-0 in that quarterfinal. And I was actually doing the live commentary on that match. And at the end of the match, they were celebrating. I saw the Indian ladies celebrating. And I just thought to myself that uh, how much of a hope and dream it would give to a million young girls watching all over. Because 10 of those girls came from remote villages in Haryana. 10 of the 18-member team. Those girls used to tell me that growing up, they were never allowed to have a mobile phone. They were never allowed to wear jeans. They are not allowed to marry someone of their choice. And how much hope it would give to a million young girls that you can do whatever you want in life. So for me, that's why sport is so powerful.
No, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Rian, this, and you've been an athlete, you've gone through a lot, and you've observed all of this a lot. India, not today, matlab, even 10, 15 years ago also, we are not really a sporting nation, if I may so say. Like, apart from cricket, we have limited understanding of even what it takes to be a fit person. and and then that's why I bring it back to, how does one communicate the gravity of what is required to a group that is very influential, needs to participate, but may not really be able to comprehend. And I give you an example of the first, like, this is like 2012. I'm looking at utilization certificates from all organizations, going cheaper and cheaper, saying per head. And I get OGQ's certificate and says, meals of so many, so many lakhs, nutrition of so much. And for me, who hadn't ever seen something like this, I was like, how does one reconcile this with what is sector practice? But the fact is, still, you don't understand what you just narrated. It's impossible to understand that this is the only way to look at athlete fitness. This is the only. Now, this is not this, again, it needs empathy, it needs understand. How do you communicate this to the other side and get them to rally around?
Yeah, it's tough because on the CSR space, actually, when you go to an organization and you try to raise funds, and someone say has a 50 lakh CSR budget, and the choice is, do you send uh, 50 girls to school, or do you construct 50 toilets in the village, or do we get a foreign coach for PV Sindhu? And the rational choice is obviously to send 50 girls to school or to construct those toilets in the village. And so that's the tough part, because in CSR, on a priority of 1 to 10, sport would probably come 11th. So that's the tough thing. But I would have to say that since in the CSR rules, sport has now been included, I think we're definitely finding, I would say, I wouldn't say niche exactly, but quite a few donors who are very passionate about sport. They understand that in a way, sport is health and sport is education. I mean, sport can teach our kids lessons that possibly the classroom could never teach us. And take PV Sindhu and Saina Nehwal. We started supporting them since 2009. So I've seen PV Sindhu since she was a little girl who was 13 years at that time in school. No one dreamt that she would go on to win 2 Olympic medals. In 2009, Nagma, there were 30 badminton courts in Hyderabad, similar number in Bangalore. Today, anecdotal evidence says that there are 7,000 badminton courts just in Bangalore and Hyderabad. So imagine how many jobs that has created. Imagine how many people are playing. Most of these courts are full from 6 in the morning till 10 in the night. People are playing sport. People are being inspired to play sport. People are being inspired to send their kids to play sport. So I think as much as possible, we try to identify donors, whether corporates or individuals who are passionate about sport. I think most donors today are very evolved. They understand that along with the many other things, simultaneously, sport is also important. They also understand that this journey to build Olympic champions doesn't happen overnight. It's a long journey. You fail. Mikin said 90% fail. I think I'm in a sector where 99.99% fail. And we research on 10,000 athletes, we shortlist 1,000, we support 100, and maybe one might win an Olympic medal.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And with that, I'll come back to Mikin. Mikin, what you described is exemplary behavior in times of crisis that led to building an institution. How does the momentum continue? Because once things have calmed down, everybody's got day jobs, everybody's got independent priorities. How what is the what does it take to keep it not only going, because act is not simply sustaining and distributing what it has. There is clearly, from everything that we're observing, a desire to do better, think better, partner with the right people and build on this. How does that happen?
Um, yeah, I think from at least my own ambition and aspiration point of view, I feel like we have a long way to go. I think what ACT was able to do in times of war uh, was massive, was amazing. But in peacetime, how do you continue this? We have a lot to learn. I will talk to you and try and learn. Um, I think what we've succeeded in is to get a bunch of startup entrepreneurs deeply engaged. So, few things that we did, right? That some of us raised our hands that we want to continue it. We had tasted. You generally don't associate VCs with giving or with social impact, but a bunch of these people had tasted what it felt like and how, yeah, just how beautiful it was to be part of this learning journey and to see some impact happen. So a bunch of us wanted to continue. I think the good part was to have people own specific areas. So there were three of us who came together around education. There were two around health. There were two around environment. And we like, hey, if in future there are more, so there is now a stream around women or gender that started. So I think principles, backing, and wanting to make things happen became like the anchor, and that has helped. But all of these people are busy people. They have day jobs. They do a whole bunch of other things. Uh, so how do you keep the energy going? I think having a passionate team that's been excited about doing this. I think that's been again a big achievement over the last couple of years. And I think finally, the some people in the startup ecosystem understanding this and starting to come together. So whether it's Manan of QMath or the Dream 11 founder, as in they just joining us as volunteers, right, and spending time with our VCs, doing deep dive diligence calls with our startup founders uh, in our funnel. I think just those bits of volunteerism have actually helped keep this momentum going. But like I started, I feel like we've at least the world at large and the startup ecosystem, most of the corporates, we do not necessarily understand and act according to crises which are long in the making. Um, whether it's climate, whether it's what's happening with youth in Punjab, it's what's happening with gender, it's what's happening with migration. They feel like, oh, they don't feel like COVID, right? And I don't think some of it I feel I take as another development sector worker, I take blame of it. I don't think we raise the stakes, we communicate well enough. I was recently watching Sonam Wangchuk talk about going on fast unto death, and that's when I had to like sit up and say that, oh man, this is serious. And but yeah, the Ladakh ecology has been fragile and is serious, and it takes a committed man to say or to go on a fast for the rest of us to wake up. But that's where we are. We are all in slumber, and I feel like more of us need to do things to make some of these peace times feel like there are actually crises and emergencies that we need to act more on. So, short answer, I think lots to do. I don't think I am not at least thrilled about what we've been able to do in the peacetime. Lots to learn for some of us, but we'll build and do.
No, can I also safely say that one of the things that ensures that it's sustained is that you do create a core team that continues while people rotate. I mean, would you like to elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think that gets missed. One of the key reasons I feel that after crisis goes, everything calms down is that everybody has things that they need to attend to that they were again away from, so everyone's gone back to their work, and then this issue that was at one point passion of our lives becomes something that we'll go back to when we have time. But what ACT also did is create a core team that worked day and night while people rotated around it.
Yeah, I think I feel we were earlier talking about in the previous the opening keynote about this idea of building institutions, right? How do institutions get built? They start out with vision, right? But then there has to be the hard work of actually putting structure in and funding the structure, ensuring there are people who stay at it, right? Who are working towards making that vision a reality, for whom that is the day job, right? And I think without all of that happening, no vision comes true, right? No institution gets built. I think our size of institutions depend on both our size of vision and how much we are able to support them, enable them in achieving that vision, and hold them accountable. I feel some of the biggest institutions that have gotten built, and I think in the previous one, like Tatas have contributed massively to it. I, on the other hand, feel that last 30 years we've probably missed a bunch of crises in terms of creating institutions, right? Like ACT is one institution that came out. We needed many more. Um, I'll just recount a example of this. Talking to Muhammad Yunus, and asking him about what led to BRAC and multiple other, as in multi-$100 million NGOs come out of Bangladesh, a small country, right? And his response was beautiful. He's like, till 1971, right, we were all freedom fighters, right? And we were working really, really hard to get our country freedom. The amount of energy and passion there was immense. And then suddenly we had freedom. Now what? I think the now what happened in Bangladesh was institutionalization, right? That all that energy could have dissipated, but instead they ended up building institutions which have then grown to become massive enablers for that country. And I don't think we've been able to create those large institutions in the, at least in the last 2 to 3 decades, that I have seen or I have watched a little more of. I wish we do, and it often does take crisis to start and trigger an institution. We are in the middle of a bunch of them. I hope we can create larger institutions as we stand.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Shagun, from here, just coming to the fact that you have institutionalized, you globally, how does one rally one's network around when a project is not doing well, or what we say as quick failures? Um how does one mobilize the ecosystem to support a failure and say we either stick around or maybe this was a bad decision? How does one navigate that?
Yeah, so I think the way our journey has been is really again built on the example. So one is that trust is not something that just happens. You trust me, and so it is somewhere that you earn the trust, and you also have to have the openness to give it, right? So to give you an example, once one of our own program partners in a different geography, not India, actually came to us on a call and said that we had submitted a report to you with all of this data getting coming from the field, and the data was totally rigged. They came out and said that, and that was the honesty that we appreciated, that they have that trust that they can come tell their donor that don't look at it, it's been rigged, we have found out now and we are working on it. And then we had a call with them to say, okay, now how do we solve for the problem? So we are partners together in this. Now, to your question, what happens? How do you then go to the the funders who are kind of supporting the pool fund? The one thing is, like I said, that over the years they have started to buy into this idea and vision of systems change, the principles that Co-Impact has. And so then all of the program partners are kind of evaluated by that benchmark. So even if you are failing, you have this space. So, and you also know that Co-Impact does have this model where we have a 1 year design phase where we give a small amount of money to our partners to really design a strategy and a vision, not a proposal, but where would this organization like to be to really bring about the change? What needs to happen within the organization? What needs to change at the systems level for the change to see at the people level, right? So it's all of these three things. So in that year also, we kind of get to really know them at a different level, right? We're not just looking for how well you have done and how many funds you have, how many projects, how many states, but to see what's the mindset of the leader, what's the second line of leadership like. And those things, even when we're talking about networks, it ultimately boils down to people and interpersonal relationships, and you cannot escape from that. So once the design phase is over and we think that now this program partner really is getting, have that alignment, then we move into the next phase where we get this long term funding. And then it's a totally different ballgame. Then our relationship is no longer that. Then we are with you no matter what. Yes, you were not able to sign this MOU. This state government is now withdrawing. Let's look for other state governments. But that honesty becomes very important. And I'm not saying that we don't have cases where we have had difficulties or we have had program partners where the trust broke down at some level. We all have that. But by and large, I would say that when Co-Impact invested in that vision, we were slowly able to communicate that upwards to our donors. And slowly we are seeing now, even the board meetings, the conversations are shifting. There are no longer those micro. Everyone's looking at the bigger picture to see, okay, where we are on the trajectory. So I do think that when we talk about networks, it really becomes about creating that shared vision. And that's not easy to do. There will be points, and it's good for all of that to come out, for the differences and divergences to come out. But once you reach the shared space, then it's owned by everyone. So to some extent, our funders own it, Co-Impact owns it, and our program partners own it.
Viren, I'll ask you the last question and then we'll open it up here. And you've rightly said that your strike rate is maybe under 1%. But in spite of it all, when it does happen, it motivates a whole sector. In the last decade, we've also seen the emergence of a lot of organizations who are working on sports at the grassroots, are working, and their goal may not be Olympic medal, but it is changing the social structure and social norms through sports. If you have some things to pass on, as as someone who's done it for 10 years, what would be 2 3 things that they have to keep in mind when they take their message out into the world? What needs to be spoken about?
Yeah, no, in sport, actually, I would broadly classify it as three broad levels where you work with young athletes. One is grassroots level, one is the intermediate level, and one is the elite level. At OGQ, we choose to work at the elite level of sport. So we actually, out of the 400 athletes we currently support, about 150 are young kids in the age group of 11 to 19 years. No one knows their names. They are nameless, faceless kids today. Hopefully, they will be the Sindhus and Mary Coms of tomorrow. Uh, you can't really term this as grassroots because these are kids who are already at a very high level. But grassroots is actually kids in school who are just beginning to play sport, and that grassroots level is possibly the most important part of our building in sport, because PV Sindhu, Lakshya Sen, Mary Kom one day had a coach who trained them when they were 8 9 years old, and that coach is equally important as Gopi Chand, who probably trains Sindhu. Without those grassroots level coaches, you cannot build champions of tomorrow. So I work with a small hockey club team in Mumbai, and it was started by someone who's truly a grassroots level coach. His name is Marazban Patel. He's known as Bawa. He's 365 days on the hockey ground, only coaching grassroots level kids. And I was part of that club. That club has actually produced 5 Olympians for India and about 10 Indian hockey players. Many players who have represented Mumbai, many kids who have got jobs. And that club is now 70 years old, and we continue to take it forward, all the former players, in our own way. And that is truly a grassroots club, because the kids who come and play hockey over there are actually young girls and boys who who are sons or daughters of auto drivers or fruit sellers, or maids at home. And those kids actually have, after their school or college, they have the hunger and fire and desire to actually come and play sport, which is really tough, right? Because in sport, when we look at young kids, actually another interesting stat is that out of 400 athletes we currently support, not a single one is from Mumbai. And 95% of athletes actually come from small towns and villages of the athletes we support. And the dichotomy in India is where the money and resources are, and the structure is, the talent and the hunger is not there. And where actually the talent and hunger is there, the resources and the coaches is not there. And at OGQ we have to try to marry those together. So for people who are in grassroots in anything they do, for me, they are gods. They are true. Without Bawa forcing me and really kicking my butt to play hockey and do that extra round, I don't think I would have ever gone and played for India. So for me, actually I was part of the PMO task force with Gopi, Abhinav and myself, where we are preparing India's plans for the next 3 Olympics. And the biggest part of our report was focusing on coaches, especially coaches at the grassroots level, and incentivizing and motivating them, because without those teachers at literally at physical education level, it's going to be hard to produce the next Sindhus and Mary Kom.
We'll open it up for questions. If people do have questions, maybe 3, 4 of them. And can the team? Oh, yeah. Yes, please. Why?
Sorry, while we come up with a question, I was just experiencing a little bit of a guilt about, hey, what ACT has done. So while I share that, hey, I hope that ACT does a lot more. But in the peacetime, we've been able to support about 60 organizations around those areas, and I think this failure mindset is something that I'm now starting to see more conversations with partner foundations that we engage with. So to me, as in more than the 60 organizations, of whom some of them have gone ahead and raised a lot more money and created a lot more impact, I feel that's powerful. But what's another powerful, not intended outcome is that at least now conversations about things failing, or us trying more and experimenting more, seem to be happening, at least with the partner organizations for ACT. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, can the team circulate the mic, please?
Hi, my name is Vivek, and this is not a question to any one specific, but it's an ecosystem question, and I would invite you to share your raw opinion on this. What do you think stops a funder or a philanthropic organization? What mental model prevents them to invest in, let's say, 10,000 institutions, rather 2, 3 institutions which will reach 100 million children? Means at intellectual level we do hear these kind of conversations, but on the ground I don't see any evidence of, in a country like India where everything happens at scale, there is, at an intellectual level we do argue for not creating cult culture, but in practice I do see in civil society organizations as well, one person, like lot of investment at in one organization, one person, and then hoping that they would reach 100 million, 200 million, instead investing in 10,000 institutions reaching 200 million. What is the mental model that prevents philanthropic organization in doing that?
We'll make him take that answer, and then we'll.
सबसे पहले आप सबको मुबारकबाद और शुक्रिया इस मंच पे बहुत सारे लोगों को जो नगमा मैम को स्पेशली पूरी टीम को कि आपने जो इतने लोगों को कल से ला ला के जो हम लोग पिक्चर में देखते थे, अलग अलग जगह पे फोटोज़ में देखते थे, पढ़ते थे, लेकिन आज एकदम जिंदा जावेद साबुत ला के हम लोग के सामने उन सुनने का अपॉर्चुनिटी दिया। ये बहुत बड़ी बात है मैम, बहुत बड़ी बात है। और आप एक लर्निंग है, आइडियल हैं और ऐसे ऐसे हस्तियों को लाया है। तो हम लोग खुश नसीब समझ रहे हैं कि ये अपॉर्चुनिटी हम लोगों को मिला है, और इसके लिए धन्यवाद। लेकिन इसके साथ मेरा आप लोग से रिक्वेस्ट था कि जो आप लोग के पास इतनी एक्सपीरियंस है, इतनी चीज़ें हैं, हमारी संस्था राहत है जो बिहार में बांग्लादेश एक तरफ है, थोड़ा सा बिहार में बंगाल है और एक तरफ नेपाल है, किशनगंज है, मैं वहाँ से बिलोंग करती हूँ। और तो हम लोग ऑर्गेनाइजेशन 21 सालों से चला रहे हैं, लेकिन जहाँ तक नेटवर्क का बात है, कई नेटवर्क्स आए गए, कई चीज़ें हम लोगों ने खट्टी मीठी यादें हैं। और कई सालों से एफसीआरए वगैरह का भी हालात हालांकि है, 2 बार मिला है एफसीआरए उसको ये, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी हम सभी के लिए कर रहे हैं। इतने सिविल सोसाइटी लोग ले आगे निकल के आ रहे हैं, लेकिन थोड़ा उदास भी हैं कहीं ना कहीं। उदास इन द सेंस की जो हालात है कि 5 साल के बाद हम तो काम इस स्मूथली से कर रहे हैं। तो आपके पास हम लोग को लगता है कि शायद जो देश के हालात है, जो एफसीआरए को लेके है, जो इन चीज़ों को कंप्लायंस, क्या उसके लिए हम लोग को कुछ करना चाहिए? क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोग अच्छा काम भी कर रहे हैं, वो भी पीछे हैं, उनका कैंसलेशन हो रहा है, उनका तो उस पर भी हम लोग को थोड़ा सा इस मन से कुछ अगर गाइड मिले, ताकि दूसरों को फ़ायदा हो सभी लोग। एक तो ये था मैम, और दूसरा सर से था कि आपने जो चीज़ बताई है काबिल तारीफ़ है। अगर आपको जो एक्सपीरियंस हो, हम लोग छोटे छोटे जो आपने कहा कि शहरों से, टोले से और गांव से, कस्बे से निकल के बच्चे बच्चियां इस फील्ड में आ रहे हैं, तो ये हकीकत है। लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी उसको एक कोई ना कोई बीच में ना बोलते फरिश्ता मिल जाता है। तो वो फरिश्ता तो शायद हम समझ रहे हैं कि आप यहाँ बन के आए हैं, इसके लिए आपको कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस कि आपको बहुत सारे अवार्ड्स वगैरह मिले हैं। लेकिन आप क्या हम लोग के जो मेल पे, उतना तो मुश्किल है इतने लोगों से इंडिविजुअली बताना, क्या मेल पे मैम से रिक्वेस्ट करूँगी, मेल पे जो आपकी जो एक्सपीरियंस है, ताकि हम लोग बच्चों पे और यूथ्स के साथ काम करते हैं,
Yeah.
तो उनको हम लोग शेयर कर
जरूर
सकते हैं, वो
जरूर
आगे आ सकते
जरूर,
हैं।
और आपके जवाब जवाब भी देंगे
धन्यवाद
आप।
मैम।
एक और सवाल एंड देन वील जस्ट रिस्पॉन्ड टुगेदर।
Suresh here. Co-Impact Act, it'll give fantastic examples of, working with organizations, and we hope that you continue to shine. Viren is on our side, implementing organization. The second time I'm hearing him speak in the last 5 days, very inspirational. My question is, there are many organizations which are unlike all of you, yet have access to tremendous resources, but very rigid. 49, if you hit 49 girls being sent to school against a target of 50, you're considered a failure,
Yeah.
right? What can you do to influence them to change?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Actually, that was going to be something. So we will do that. But would you like to take Vivek's question to begin with, and then we can quickly wrap it?
So Vivek, good to see you here. Long time.
अच्छा, एक और. Okay, one more question.
I'm just going to build on his question
Please.
because I think the answer should cover it all. Hi, I'm Saba from Chirag. To build on the gentleman's question, networking is wonderful, but we see it happening a lot within like-minded associates, but also within the same bracket. So we will see it happening within the larger NGOs, and we will see it happening within the larger foundations and the larger grantees and the larger grant makers. But it is the grassroots implementing NGOs that somewhere are lost in this entire RFPs, and we don't take unsolicited proposals. And the Grow Fund has been a wonderfully validating experience for us to kind of bridge that network, and we're very, very grateful for it. But what can we do, and what can you do for us that will allow nonprofits that are of a grassroots level, leaner organizations that don't necessarily have the bandwidth to deal the way larger the 1 million students and the 1 million mouths to feed, but instead 10 organizations doing
20,000 mouths to feed and 20,000 girls to school. How do we facilitate that networking with grant makers so that those organizations may have an opportunity to scale, yes, but may have an opportunity to thrive if not scale?
So why did you even ask the question?
Tell us what to do and we'll do it.
Yeah, no, I think I feel, especially with Indian philanthropy, we are at a stage where these are just about starting, right? As in, grow what SVP does, what ACT does, are drops in the ocean, right? And they start out with the intention, but given their resources, given what they can do, they're able to cover growth at 100 to start with, right? And I hope that 100 becomes 100,000. It'll take some time and growth for it to get there. Similarly, what ACT has been able to do or what SVP does. And I think besides that, at least what some of us try and do is what's happening with what you see Accelerate India Philanthropy or Giving Pie Networks. We're pushing this idea that like thousands of flowers blooming, uh, this models of venture philanthropy where failure is acceptable is possibly better than building just one or two institutions. You asked about what's the mental model or what's the hurdle. In my opinion, the hurdle is trust, right? That it is about having the idea of having control over, like, hey, if I can control, then I can go from input to output to outcome to impact. That worldview versus a worldview of like, let's trust and let's see what happens. Let's take the risk. None of us know the future. Let's explore what happens. The latter is often harder. And by the way, the latter is harder even in the for-profit world in India. Uh, when Flipkart was seeking offers for funders, none of the Indian biggies were willing to come on the table, right? So it's not surprising that even in the startup ecosystem, where you think about, hey, while a lot has happened, the larger, the more bold bets are still coming from global partners. And I think then we touched upon FCRA, tough topic. We just got our own FCRA like a couple of years back, and like I did connect with you because while I am representing ACT that I helped start, I run Udyam Learning Foundation, so I'm a non-profit social entrepreneur myself, who's out to fundraise and trying to figure out, okay, what Nagma was saying, like how do these networks work? Because I am not able to make my networks work. Um, so I feel like simply Vivek, I think just pushing more for this, right, and amplifying this, but also being able to celebrate the successes of these models, right, of what comes through from this, actually holding them accountable and analyzing them. I feel there is very little to hold philanthropy accountable. In some sense, you could argue that maybe philanthropy should never be held accountable. It's philanthropy after all. But at the same time, I feel, at least for those of us who care about the bang for the buck in a country where the needs are high, I feel it's important to see how much your money is able to do. And if you have models that can do a lot more, you should use them. So that model of holding philanthropy accountable could help in philanthropy doing a lot more. So
Yeah, I'll just build on this and then pass it on to Viren. So I think what I would say here is that there is a big movement that's now happening overall, right? Where, I really like the questions a lot because it's about who's having access to certain spaces. Why is there so much exclusivity and how do we become more inclusive, right? And this whole thing starts, there's so much going on around decolonization right now, which is really about this whole model of international NGOs, etc., as the one setting the headquarters set the agenda. India and other global south countries are just the implementing partners, right? So there's a shift happening that, no, how can that decision making flow here? Similar shift also has to happen within India, for example, where the local becomes the mainstream, right? And that sets the agenda, that sets the narrative. But what's happening is that there are a lot of these tactical issues that come in the way. So I will say that the foreign funds, in some ways, foreign philanthropy or global north philanthropy is way more evolved. They are more likely to be okay to take risks, etc. And again, not to say that they are better, but they've just had more time in that space. The Indian philanthropy is still new, but till the time it doesn't go through its own evolution, we will then, because with co-impact, the problem is we would love, our thing says that we want to support locally rooted organizations. We don't fund INGOs typically unless it's in very rare cases. But then you need that infrastructure. You need to have FCRA, the organization has to, and then it has to be of a certain site. So you get into those same constraints. So the kind of, almost this revolution that we want within, like to completely change the way philanthropy and the civil society organizations are being supported, for that, I think some of this movement has to happen in domestic philanthropy. Otherwise, we will not be able to go, transverse this path of really having the local be the most important, I think.
I don't think there's any right or wrong. There are always two choices. For us at OGQ, right at the start when we were brainstorming on strategy, we had two choices in front of us. Do we go wide or do we go deep? And for me, Geet Sethi and Prakash Padukone are my mentors. And Geet always told me, for OGQ, excellence is scale. And for that, we go deep. And Geet always tells me, Viren, focus, focus, focus. And it's easy. I tell him, Geet, easy for you to say you're a snooker and billiards player. I'm a hockey player. We can't focus on anything. uh, but yeah, there's no right or wrong in that. Ma'am, to your point, actually, that, for example, we deal with many young badminton players who are 11, 12, 13 years old. I get inquiries from parents all the time, where do we send our kids to play? And so the best young players, the temptation is always to go to the well-known big badminton academies, Prakash Padukone Badminton Academy, Gopi Chand Academy. I actually tell them, don't go over there. Go to the small unknown academy where there's a really good coach who will look after you and give you more one-to-one attention, where you will learn much more. So for us at OGQ, we're actually now funding a lot of we're having a small academy program where actually the true young talents are coming from there. Because you go to the big academy, you're one of 100 kids. And actually, the small academies in the small towns and villages are actually doing far better work sometimes, and can play a much more meaningful role. And lastly, I just want to say, for us, something that has really worked, Nagma, and I have to thank Poonam is here from AT Foundation, and Amit Chandra, who's again supported us for many years, just talking about capacity building. I think just hiring the right people, we invest a lot of time and effort in just ensuring we get the right people on board. People, as mentioned, with real true passion and ability to hang in there for the long run and truly wanting to make a difference. I think capacity building, there's, I think, too less funding in capacity building. We need to improve that much more to get really quality people in the social sector space. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give this panel a huge round of applause. Some of these pertinent questions will be carried forward in the next panel, and we're really looking forward to that. But it's very important to also acknowledge the value of some of the things all of you have shared, because these are things that from a distance seem fairly easy. A bunch of wealthy people coming together and making a pool fund, fairly easy, because they can. And you have access to global networks, and you just get them all together, and everybody's signing checks because they can. And sports is so attractive, so why should not everybody support it? From a distance, this all seems much easier than what it is to really sit in the thick of it and say, all right, if this is what I want, how do I do it in a way that it doesn't stop when I step back? So I'm sure your challenges also are, if I am not here today, how does this work carry on? And that becomes the North Star again of how we act on our impulses and on our intentions, and ensure that they live beyond us. So with that, a huge round of applause for all of you. Thank you very much.